Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Journey to Fatherhood event. This is part of our Be Fruitful conference for 2023. I believe we're in day 3 now, and today we're going to be talking about we're going to be digging deep into the topic of fatherhood, what it means to become a father, some of the challenges, some of the issues that come along with it. Um, and I think it's really important that we highlight. Number one, we have some really qualified, interesting panelists who are going to speak as well. Some very esteemed candidates who are going to speak on this topic. But it's also important to recognize that this is an area that affects men as well, right? And that no one should have to suffer in silence. No one should have to go through the pain of loss or any of the challenges that come along to the struggles of parenthood. No one should have to go through that alone or without having a voice or an outlet, right? So tonight we simply want to provide resources, and we want to just dig deep into some dialogue that we believe will be helpful. So want to start to introduce our panelists, and they're going to hopefully show up on your screen shortly. We have Kenneth Spence, first and foremost. Welcome, Ken. Great to have you. Personal friend of mine. We go back a very, very long time. We also have Brandon Johnson, infertility coach. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you. We have TJ Payton. Nice to have you, TJ. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Dr. Veronica Rupert. Welcome. So let's get into it. I want to give you all a chance to kind of state your own bio, so to speak. So I want you to just give a brief intro, starting with you, Ken, and then we'll move to Brandon, TJ, and Veronica. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, and specifically when you hear that word father, what does that mean to you? What does the word father mean to you? So Ken, you can start us off.
All right, cool. Well, certainly great to be a part of this event. Ken Spence, I'm a husband to Dominique, a father to Nathaniel. Been a preacher seemingly forever. Been the pastor of the Camden Church for nearly 8 years now. And fatherhood, or being a father, means to me is the foundation that the family can be built upon, that the support, no matter what, is there in the father. That's how I take it, how I feel it means.
Awesome. I love that word, foundation. Brandon, if you don't mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, and when you hear that word father, what does that mean to you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon. I am been married for 12 years, father to Emily. And I'm the owner of Infertility Isn't Inferior, in which I provide therapy and coaching for those going through the infertility journey. When I hear the word father, it means protector, leader, someone who has to raise this child up and know how to deal with the world. It's one of the most important titles that you can carry in life.
Yes,
Love it. That's awesome. TJ, tell us a little bit about who you are, please, and tell us what that word father means to you. How does that resonate with you?
Hi, everybody. My name is TJ Payton, and I am the author of the book Semen Secrets, Truth and Confessions of a Wife Dealing with Male Infertility. And my husband and I have been married since 2008, and our infertility journey, as we know it, began in 2013. And when I hear the word father, I hear the word steadiness, and clarity and wisdom. I think I just think about my own father. My mother and I are firecrackers, and my dad is the steadiness that keeps everything kind of, blended. He, if you get on his nerves, he'll let you know, and he's done with it. And my husband is kind of the same way, very steady in his thought process, very thoughtful, and also going back to what Brandon said, protector, overarching protector. And not just in strength, but also in prayer, as far as covering is concerned. And so that's what I think about when I hear the word father.
Man, that is awesome. That steadiness. Woo, that rings out to me. So thank you for mentioning that. Veronica, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what does that word father mean to you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Veronica Rupert. I'm a urologist, so I treat disorders of male reproduction as well as the urinary system as well. And when I hear the word father, it's similar to what most people have said. To me, it means protector. I also think of leader, like leader of the family, especially like spiritually, and just sort of being like a rock to the family as well. Um, and a strength, if that makes sense. When things are broken, I feel like a father is strong. And I think, from my personal experience, I am adopted. And so my perception of what a father is isn't necessarily biological. To me, it's the person that raised you and the person that, supports you and is there for you, throughout your childhood. And so that's what father means to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. We're getting a little bit of background noise, so I'm going to ask if you happen to not be speaking at the moment, if you don't mind just putting your mic on mute. Definitely appreciate that. And thank you all. Thank you all for the intro. Thank you all for the for just being transparent and speaking to what that term father means to you. I guess I should take a moment to introduce myself as well. Brian Murray. I guess specifically my title in this forum is advocate, infertility advocate. My wife happens to be Deanna Murray, who's the founder of Bearing Fruit, which is this Be Fruitful Be Fruitful Empowerment Conference that you are participating in. And when I hear the word father, and I have to give a description of it, I always think about the song Family Reunion by the OJs. I don't know if you guys are, I'm assuming you are familiar with that song, but if not, there is a segment of that song where I believe it's Eddie Levert starts to just kind of talk. Like the music is still playing in the background, but he's just talking about with the father. He said, when we talk about the family, let's start with the father. My dad was a huge OJ's fan. I didn't find that out until really, really late in life. But that song always resonated with me because it says, the father is the leader, the director, setting the foundation, not being domineering, but providing love and guidance and shelter for everyone in the family, right? Not just my kids, not like everybody under this umbrella is part of that responsibility that I feel as a father. And I'm glad, TJ, you said something that really all of you said things that resonated with me. But TJ, you said it's not just about the financial provision. I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said, but it's in all areas. It's spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. And that's an area where I try to constantly check myself and challenge myself that because I feel a very, very fierce responsibility to protect my tribe, to protect my family, even to the point where if it costs my life, I would willingly do it. But I try to remember that it's not just giving stuff, but it's giving of me. It's covering them, in terms of my faith, the things that I need to live up to and walk up to, the integrity I need to stand on. So yeah, all of you said things that I'm totally in agreement with. And, there's probably very little that I can add on top of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss out questions to you guys. And I'm going to kind of like sort of piggyback, so to speak. Like there are some assigned questions, but feel free to chime in on questions that come up that may not necessarily get tossed your way. But I do think it's important that there's a sort of like a wide scope of voices on these questions that we're going to throw out. So, and again, just to underscore, the reason why we're doing this is because as men, there's not enough discussion around what men specifically deal with when it comes to infertility. I can speak to that personally because although I've been blessed to become a father, I also know what it's like to experience the loss, right, through miscarriage. So I have both perspectives. And there are things there's a very unique process that you go through as a man when you're dealing with these things, and men are already not very prone to communicating and talking. So a lot of things get bottled up if we don't have those tools and those outlets to discuss some of these things. So just know that the things that we're talking about, the answers you're going to give are extremely, extremely valuable for men to help deal with some of these subjects that we're going to talk about. So the first question we kind of already answered, which is what does the term father mean to you? The next one, I'm going to throw it out. And I'm hoping all of you can answer this question briefly. And just how did your relationship with your own father impact the journey to you becoming a parent? Again, how did your own relationship with your father impact your journey to becoming a parent? And this time, let's start in reverse order. Veronica, I'm going to start with you, then jump to TJ, then Brandon, then Kenneth.
Okay. So my relationship with my father. So my father was definitely a man of few words, but he definitely was somebody who, if you're like sitting with him one-on-one, like that's really where like the valuable time was. Even still, he's not like a big telephone person, but like in person, he just has a lot. I don't know. He has a lot of wisdom. He has a lot of love. He's not judgmental. Like I always noticed that he did provide, like you said, financially, but he also like was a listening ear. And I feel like talking to like a mom is different than talking to your dad, even about the same topic. You know, women are by nature like we analyze. And you know, there's just a different type of response. I feel like my dad was always like he can like look at things more simply. Um and just like give me his perspective, and he always like somehow makes it funny. So I feel like, you know, that comic relief is also like, you know, a good thing. And I feel like being adopted is something special. Like I've noticed with my like parents growing up, like it's always been like this open home, and like that definitely has like stuck with me, you know, like every person that comes in is family, you know, and we can accept you, and like you can be part of, you know, our family even without having been born into it, or even if you haven't been around for, you know, the past 30 years like I have. It doesn't matter. And so I feel like those experiences were positive, and I'm just grateful that me and my dad are so close.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. TJ, we're gonna jump to you now. If you don't mind answering that question, how did your relationship with your father impact your journey to becoming a parent?
I think I know from me, my father taught me standards. You know, there was a certain standard by which I pattern all of the people that I've ever talked to. I haven't talked to that many, but of those, you know, my dad let me know, you know, it's still appropriate to open doors. It's still appropriate to pull out chairs. It's still appropriate, you know, to be a gentleman and to court you and not to be all in your space. You know, those things are still appropriate. So my dad really taught me to make sure that at the end of the day that I set up a standard for myself of respect, and that I don't accept anything less than that. If that is my standard, then that's your standard and that's what you stick to. And if anybody can't meet your standard, then you keep it moving. And so my dad also taught me a lot about work ethic, and making sure that, you know, I go to work to do hard work, and I go to do good work, but I also come home and unplug because I have a family there. My dad was in the military, so a lot of his time was spent, you know, deployed. But when he came home, he was very present. And my dad also has taught me to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, making sure that you never know what someone is going through. So before you jump to assumptions about, you know, a person's attitude or how they treat you, you know, you don't know what's on the other end, on the other side. And similar to what Veronica said, my dad is a man of very few words, but when he speaks up and says what he says, he means what he says. And his thing is just to make his understanding understood. So once he makes his understanding understood, that's it. And he doesn't hold grudges. My mom will go on and on and on and on and on. My dad says what he has to say, he's done with it. And he's a very giving. I think that that's something else. My relationship with my father taught me to be a giver. Something I still am learning, because everyone has a gift, and I think that's my father's gift. He can see anybody and he will do anything for anybody if he has the means to do it. And so that compassion piece is also something that has influenced in my role as a parent, and how we parent my daughter.
I love it. I love it, man. What you all are sharing is like I mean, in real time, it's like inspiring me to become better at father. Just hearing how your fathers impacted you on your journey to parenthood is actually inspiring to me and helping me see where I have to level up. So thank you so much for sharing that, Brandon. We're going to toss it over to you. How did your relationship with your father impact you becoming a parent?
You know what, Brian? I've been trying to think of how to answer this question. So allow me to be honest.
Absolutely.
Because there may be other men who had this issue. But growing up, my father wasn't really there. And he had some issues. And I didn't really get to know him until I was an adult. And I went through issues. And that's when I really got to sit down and know him and like, look, Pops, there's some things you got to teach me because being a man is hard. And I need to know how to navigate this world. And I'm struggling out here. I need your guidance. And he would always say, look, you're smart. You've always been a straight A student. I'm like, I don't care about none of that right now. I need to know how to navigate the world. And I think that kind of opened the door and helped him become a father because in a sense, I think it's always what he wanted to do. It's just being young and having both my parents being teenagers when they had me. It was just immaturity at that point. What he has taught me and what I've also learned by what he hasn't taught me is to be patient, be guiding, talk to my child, walk them through those steps. Don't be so quick to accuse, and take interest in your child. When they show something, even if it's for the millionth time, just act like it's brand new because it's brand new to them and they come with the new excitement. He has taught me how to enjoy life. He always had a great work ethic. Even when he wasn't around, he always worked. So that has been passed on. And so I've learned to dissect the good that he had and take the good away and learn that he had a lot of wisdom that I wish he would have given me when I was much younger and not have to wait till an adult. So yeah, I would say that's what I've learned from my father and how it impacted the way I father my child now. It's just by the things that he did and didn't do. And it's no fault of him. We had a great relationship. And the hard part is that we got that relationship and he passed away. And I was like, man, I had like 6 true years with you. And it is gone. Like, so that's what I learned. And don't take a moment for granted.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your transparency and giving us both perspectives of when there's the absence of the relationship as well as when there is the relationship that thrives and exists. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities personally that I can attest to. Ken, we're gonna toss it to you, and we want you to answer the same question. How did your relationship with your father impact you becoming a parent?
Man, oh man, my father was my father was something else. He he was around, but he very similar to I think TJ said. Like he set standards. So he was like, this is how it's supposed to be. Some things I didn't understand. I think the two biggest things that set me up, he ironically he was an accountant and he was always around attorneys and whatnot for some reason. And he used to say something that I found interesting, and it's from the Constitution. He would say, your job is to protect your family from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I'm like, domestic. And he would say, sometimes, man, it comes from sources you'll never see. And you have to be that force. He was loud. I'm loud. he was boisterous to a certain extent. I'm boisterous to a certain extent. But he was never, I think that the other thing that really prepped me was not to be ashamed or afraid of my emotions. There were many times that daddy was unafraid to cry, unafraid to show his emotion in that way. Sometimes he like I saw every emotion that he had, I'd see it. Most times he got jokes, but it was him being unafraid of that, I think kind of set me up. So as I was coming up, I didn't where I knew, what is it? We used to say it even with songs. I know a man ain't supposed to cry. But he was like, there's times for it and there's times you need to. And so I gained that from him. I think Brandon said it best. I wish I had more time with him because he passed away when I was young. But those lessons really set me up where I could see with my son now. I'm like, yeah, we very much the same way. It's like carbon copies along the way. And so we operate in the same way. So I try to instill that with my son. Don't be afraid of your emotions. But foundation, look, we're going to work hard, which has been said as well, but we're going to work hard. We're going to make sure stuff is right. And we're going to protect the home. That's our job. And those things, I think, prepare me best for fatherhood.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And knowing you personally, man, everything you said makes 100% sense. Like just especially, foundation, boisterous, that like it makes total sense as you describe your father, having known you for as long as I have. And I guess I should, in all fairness, I should answer the same question for myself. How did my relationship with my father impact me becoming a parent? Man, probably longer than what this event will allow me to speak for, but I can relate to all aspects of what was shared. What I will say I probably lean closer to the experience of is that of Brandon. Always knew my father, always loved my father dearly, but the relationship was complicated. It's the best way I could describe it. My parents divorced, I believe, when I was about either 6 or 7, which ironically is the age that my daughter is right now. And so most of my life was raised as a single mother. Like my mom was superhero. Like she was everything, basketball game, whatever needed to be done, she did it, providing everything. So it wasn't until I became an adult that I felt like I really formed my own relationship with my father, through a lot of like baggage and bitterness, some things that I carried. It wasn't until I really got to know him as a person and not necessarily his mistakes or his absence. When I learned him the person as opposed to his what he did do, that's when I felt more connected with my father. And shortly thereafter, he passed from cancer. And unfortunately, my father passed on March 7th, I believe it was 2013. My daughter was born on March 8th, 2016. So those two things have always been interconnected to me. My journey to a father, as well as what I felt like maybe I lacked coming up from a father. But what I will say about my dad is when it was my turn to become a father, that's when I figured out it's not so easy. You know what I mean? And I understood. It was like, oh, okay. I see how one could make some mistakes on this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not an easy walk. There's no manual for it. Some days you get it right. Some days you get it wrong. So I firmly understood him better when I became a father. And it was like, okay, this thing is not so easy. So let's open this conversation back up again. Thank you all for sharing. And the question I'm going to move into now is specifically, we want to dive deep into the concept of infertility, the subject of infertility, rather. Infertility does not discriminate. We know that about a third of the time, it's the man specifically that suffers with infertility. About a third of the time, it's the woman who is suffering from infertility. And about another third of the time, it's both, right? So that's a pretty evenly split pie there where in terms of how men deal with infertility. So the question I want to know is, what was your response when infertility knocked on your door? And I'm going to start with TJ. If you don't mind, I want to get your response to that question. I'm going to go to Ken and then Brandon. I'll repeat that question one more time. What was your response when infertility knocked at your door?
Shock, because one, I had never heard of male infertility. My husband had not either. And so that's the first emotion. Then it went right into anger, because we're both Christians. And so, the why God question was very much, because for us, we followed the formula. We got dated, got married, and here we are, trying to do the right thing. And, you know, we just got blindsided, to me, because we didn't know, anything about male infertility. And then hurt and disappointed. We got married first. We, enjoyed our marriage. We had great jobs. And so we weren't equipped to deal with imperfection. And the thought of imperfection never really hit us until then. So it's almost like you're going through the stages of grief, like you're grieving the fact that this thing you dreamed, this thing you thought was so natural, is not true. And so, how do you deal with that also in the face of trying to navigate life and marriage? Because we both had very different emotions. We thought about divorce several times. And so, when infertility knocked at my door, I wasn't ready. No one's ever ready for infertility, but for us as a very young couple, it was like unfathomable. Like, it's nothing you ever would think to someone to look at you and say, you may never be able to have your own child. And then the journey along with that is something I can honestly always replay the call in my mind when the nurse called and said, we didn't find any sperm. I can hear the call. I can see my face. I can feel, the emotions are still very much there. And so, yes, shock. It was nothing that anyone could prepare me for. And if someone would have told me when we were younger, it was a possibility, I would have called them a liar for sure. So that was my first response.
Thank you. It's just amazing, like how much commonality there is as everyone gives their perspective, and certainly yours is extremely valuable. The raw emotions, and like you said, you can recall conversations, you can recall thoughts, you can recall, fork in the road decisions, like which all of it resonates. So definitely appreciate on a personal level you sharing that. I'm going to bring in Ken now on this question. What was your response when infertility knocked on your door?
TJ hit all the points. Like it's like, thank you, TJ. Like, because it's I go back to quite literally the day in the hospital. We actually, for our second child, went in. This is that first sonogram. It's supposed to be, and come to find out, it was like, well, she walks out. I'm up there trying to understand the thing, and in that moment when the doctor came in and started to say this is what it was, ectopic. For that moment, I still hear, like, I can hear my wife Dominique, like, just I hear her crying, and it was logic mode. Okay, this. The moment that sits with me that I think played out for years was going downstairs to the waiting room and walking in, and I couldn't hold it together. Like, as soon as we walked in, it was like, "What are you here?" They're like, well, what you here for? My wife is, and I broke down in tears. And that moment plays over and over. And ever since then it was miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And I think my focus was, okay, I have to be there for her. Like, I because we in this. So I'm very much like, okay, I need to make sure she's good. And all of this stuff. And at a certain point, honestly, I checked out. I gave up. Where I didn't say it to her. I didn't say it to my wife. I just was, this is just how it's going to be. We're just going to love, the son we got. We're going to enjoy ourselves here. And I just checked out. So I gave up, honestly, is really what it is. And it wasn't until 2019, I got diagnosed. December 2019, January 2020, I was diagnosed with MS. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I've seen where they said lower infertility based on I have two autoimmune diseases, that plus something else, and it's like the two combined. It's like, okay, well, it's low, and I think that was like the nail in the coffin. I really gave up in that regard, and just that was my response. Am I hopeful? Sure enough. Do I believe God can change things? Yes. But I also believe God can sustain us where we are. So I kind of
Powerful.
content. Like, okay, thank you, God, for the son you gave us, for the child you gave us. Thank you. And then interacting with so many children that I've adopted as nieces and nephews. And it's like, yeah, we got children here. Even mentoring some youngsters, the mindset is like, here's our children. So it went from giving up to, you know what, God put all this love in you to give to children. Yeah, your son and other children as well. In a healthy, of course, manner that really helps lift them up. So that's kind of where I put the energy from, okay, we're not going to have another one. I put it into, I can support others. And that's kind of where, from giving up until support, that's where it's really been.
Man, thank you. That was powerful, man. And I love that. I love that there's a as we're discussing these things, several of you have mentioned the aspect of faith, be it Christianity, your particular journey. I love that you all are not afraid to mention that and speak to it and speak specifically to how God worked on you or worked through you in that situation. So thank you for sharing that. Brandon, I want to loop you in now on this question. What was your response when infertility knocked on your door?
I was angry. I was angry, and like TJ said, I thought we did everything right. We both finished college. We got married. Um, our careers are on the up and coming, and all of a sudden, I can't have children. And I come from a fertile family. My family's huge. I have like 20 plus cousins, two brothers, and everybody just popping out babies. Oops, it was an accident. Oops, it was an accident. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I can't have an accident. Quit asking me when I'm at children. It ain't happening. So the day that I found out I was infertile, I was at the, I only took a half a day because I didn't expect to find out that news at work. And went there, the doctor gave me some football analogy. Basically, I'm on offense and the defense is winning, basically. And we went to a restaurant afterwards, and I just broke down and cried and asked why me. And I just went into like a state of depression after that. And me and God had a lot of questions because, I've always been a firm believer, always had faith, always wanted to be a father, thought this was my path. And, it didn't. So I was starting to give up on that, as well as starting to give up on my marriage. I told my wife to leave me. I'll just be by myself. And I'll figure life out, but, go build yourself a family. And when she didn't, and she said, we're going to get through this together, it's when I actually gained hope. And like, okay, somehow we got to work through this. Somehow we have to find a way. Somehow I have to pick myself up. And I tried looking for therapists. I'm like, I'm a therapist. Let me look for a therapist who specializes in infertility. And there's no men. I was like, okay, check off the big three. None. Okay. Any other cities? I checked Chicago, California, New York, Philly, Atlanta, and I couldn't find a therapist that specialized in infertility that was a male. Which kind of led me on a journey that I am now, is which I said no man deserves to go through this alone, and that we need guidance and help through this, because it's one of the most painful things that we go through as men, and I didn't realize how painful it was until you're actually with it. Um, and that came after depression, after my faith was restored, after I wasn't ashamed to step back into church, and my wife and I got back together, and like we're gonna figure it out. We can't have a child traditionally, but we're gonna figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
It took a whole lot of work, and each one of those days are very well remembered.
Yeah.
So,
man, thank you. I love how you mentioned the paradigm of being a therapist and needing a therapist. That's huge, man. I wish that there was more. I just wish that there was more. There was more around the availability, the resources when it comes to therapy, because men need it, women need it, couples need it. So thank you
yes.
for speaking to that directly. I'm going to bring in. We do have a surprise guest by the name of Dr. Gittens. I'm going to bring him in shortly on this next question. I want to follow up with my own answer to this question. What was my response when infertility knocked at my door? This is probably one of the biggest regrets that I have throughout everything my wife and I have experienced, the difficulties of childbirth. My response was very disconnected, and I didn't realize it at the time. Most of my life, I never felt promised or entitled to having a child. I just felt like if it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. I honestly kind of felt like I hit the lottery just getting married, just finding a wife that I loved. And I was cool with that and I was content. But the reason I say disconnected is because when we did start to, to try to bring forth a child, that was a huge like my wife was really, really suffering with the thought of at that time, it looked like there was a really, really strong possibility, you know what I mean, that we would never become parents. And here I am on one hand, like, all right, well, I'm okay with it. And my wife is like really, really struggling with it. And I wish that I would have been more aware or in tune. And it really took for her to break down and almost in a moment of like argument of tension to really tell me like, I feel alone going through this. And that's when it really hit me like, man, like, my response to all of it was just really not what it should have been. Right. Even if I was okay with the thought of we might not become parents, my wife was not okay with it. So I needed to become not okay with it so that we can become okay together. Like, I just wish that I would have been more in tune or more responsive sooner in that process. And praise God, thankfully, we did become parents. But we also experienced miscarriage, right? And we had a lot of failed pregnancy tests and tears and all those things. So I honestly can say that my response was not great, but man, just thank God for His grace, for teaching me along the way to recognize and become responsive. And I feel like when my wife and I got on the same page about, no, this is a very real struggle for us, jointly for both of us, regardless of whose body it's affecting. When we got on that same page together is when things turned around for us. So that was my experience with infertility directly. So for this next question, I want to bring on Dr. Gittens. I'm going to pose the question and ask Dr. Gittens if you can like briefly just give us some background on who you are, why this topic is so interesting to you. And the question specifically is, if a man is suspecting that he may be suffering with infertility, what should he do? If a man is suspecting that he may be suffering with infertility, what should he do?
Okay, thanks for having me here. And I just was able to catch the tail end of a lot of your stories. And, I think it's great that you guys are putting on this forum. And, I hope people listen and maybe can learn something from, all of your experiences. So a little bit about me. I'm a male infertility specialist. So I'm a sexual medicine and male infertility specialist. What that means is I essentially did a urology residency, and then I did a special fellowship in male infertility. So A lot of the men in the Philadelphia area and New York area, I'll see them for fertility problems, which range from a number of things. And I don't know if you guys had discussed this in the beginning of the talk, but there's a number of reasons why men can have difficulties with fertility, right? There's hormonal reasons, there's these environmental factors, there's physical causes such as like varicoceles and other issues with the anatomy of the reproductive tract. There's also genetics, right? At least in my practice, I find that there's hardly a patient that, unless there's certain genetic abnormalities that we really can't help that patient with. But in general, there's usually something that we can do. So there is hope for this. And so the question was, what should a person do if they're having some fertility problems? Is that what the question was?
Yeah. If a man specifically is suspecting that's the case, what should he do?
Yeah. So I think that they should reach out to, first of all, they should reach out to their primary care doctor. That's probably the first step. And then the primary care provider would probably order a semen analysis and some blood work, right? And if there's some issues from there, they should probably refer them to, depending on the area where they are. There's not a lot of us fertility specialists that deal with men, but they would probably have them give them a referral of some sort to a urologist, and hopefully that urologist will have some knowledge on male infertility. But not all urologists do, right? And so, in terms of the education that general urologists get, it's it could be just a person or two in the clinic that they've seen during residency. So hopefully that patient would be able to find a person like myself who is a urologist that focuses on male infertility, and we can kind of work through all the different problems that they might be having. In terms of, we would do a full workup, we would do a full physical exam, we would do genetic testing, and then we can kind of talk about all the options that person and their partner can probably undergo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giddens, for joining us and for giving us background and intro and education. These resources are super valuable, and I'm sure there are a lot of men and women and couples who are going to benefit from this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to bring in TJ and Dr. Veronica. I haven't forgotten about you too. Dr. Veronica, I do want to throw a question at you. What are the things that impact, from your individual perspective, what are the things that impact male fertility that we need to be mindful of when we are considering building a family? And I can restate that so hopefully it's clearer. What are things that impact male fertility that we need to be mindful of when we are considering building a family?
Sorry, I was having on mute. So I think, so there are a lot of factors that Dr. Giddens alluded to, but I think things that you could impact that you may not even think could cause an impact are your recreational activities, as an example. So marijuana is something that can affect fertility. And I think a lot of people don't even know that. And it's maybe something that they use and they aren't worried about. And I actually had a friend who was struggling with that and also struggling with infertility. So I shared that with him. There's a lot of other factors as well. Alcohol, other types of drugs as well, cigarette smoking, your overall health, obesity, things like that. Those are things that you can impact. Your personal history is also important. And so some people may have a history of cystic fibrosis. Well, some people may not know that there can be some association with not having a vas deferens, which is the tube that brings sperm into the semen. So if you don't have that tube on one side or another, then you may have issues with fertility as well. I think another thing to be mindful of is that a successful pregnancy is dependent on erectile function as well as ejaculatory function. And so if there are any issues in that department, to have them addressed. And I always tell people to be open and to be honest. And, this is a normal bodily function that we can help with. But if we don't have all the information, sometimes it's difficult to really help people in the way that they would need. So those are some of the things I think that I would sort of keep in the forefront.
Thank you so much. Extremely valuable. You're educating me at the same time, because I didn't know these things either. So thank you for sharing that. TJ, I want to bring you back in. We got about 10 minutes, I believe, of this event left. So I am going to ask, as you guys come in, to try as much as you can to try to keep your responses to maybe a minute or two. But TJ, I want to give you the floor. The question is, if it is not you directly suffering with infertility, but you are still impacted because of your significant other, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate that while still being supportive?
Who? First, being honest with yourself when you can't navigate it. You know, I think for me, when I tried so hard to like hold up, not just for me, but for people around me. You know, I'm going to the baby showers. I'm just going through the motions, and my husband and I are strangers to each other. And so I think first being honest when you don't have the answers. When you finally can get over yourself and be honest with yourself that you can't handle it and you don't know how to handle it. And then I think after that becomes the healing portion of it. I think for me, the realization was when my husband, when we first started to try to repair our marriage, that he told me he thought about taking his life because he couldn't give me a child. And because he didn't understand, you know, we're so conditioned to be fathers, he didn't understand, well, what else is there left for me to do if I can't do X? And so I think there it was for me, the shock in the gut was, here I was, and we talk about spirituality, here I was putting a baby that I was never promised over somebody that I am, you know, biblically speaking, and just in general am supposed to love outside of even having a child. And so, you know, all the process I was taking my husband through, I was killing my husband, not really realizing what was happening to him, and him also seeing me grieve was also an issue, because he would try to protect me when people said, oh, is it your wife? And so I think you have to first be honest where you are. And then once you can be honest with where you are, then you can have conversations, honest conversations with your significant other. And also, I think the last thing I would say is be honest where you are, especially if you're a spiritual person, spiritually, and be honest with the fact that it may not be. I had to get honest with myself of the fact that, you know, okay, what if God is saying no, and I'm never a parent, and we're never parents? What is that going to look like for me? And God, if that's not what you want to do, well, then what are you doing with us if we can't be the thing that we desire the most? And I think having those honest conversations and navigating that support is really just being straight up when you can't do it. And I think that's really important, and not trying to sugarcoat that you got it all together, because you don't, even if you want to act like you do.
Wow, man, thank you so much for sharing that. We do have one final question that we're going to bring everyone on for. And before I do that, I also want to respond to the question that you just answered, TJ, which is if it's not you directly suffering with infertility, but you're still impacted because of your significant other, how do you navigate that yourself while being supportive? My perspective on that, my experience was that it requires being vulnerable. One, yourself individually. It requires being vulnerable to your spouse, your significant other, whoever that person might be, and it requires the two of you jointly being vulnerable to one another and with one another. And so, what I mean by that vulnerability is, like, it took when my wife finally broke down and told me that I feel alone. Men most of the time are fixers, right? We're like, okay, we got to fix it. Once she said that, it was okay. From this point on, you will not go there. There will not be a doctor's visit. There will not be a support group. There will not be anything that you are forced to do on your own. So, and there were some things that I had to say strongly back to my wife to reaffirm her, to say, hey, look, I didn't marry you for your ability to give me children. I married you because I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, right? The children are the bonus if we have it. But at the same time, I'm not going to dismiss this and say that something that you feel is a part of we feel is a part of our destiny, and this makes you part of who you are as a woman. I'm no longer going to like look over that and just say, okay, well, I'm all right with it. So we did. I remember we did support groups and some of them were excruciating. Like, it was tough to be in a space of, you need encouragement and you need to be lifted up. And some of these support groups that we went to were not great for it. They just were not. We did not need to hear more like the pouring on of discouragement. We needed the opposite, right? But again, if I didn't become vulnerable enough to my wife, if she didn't become vulnerable enough to me, if we didn't become vulnerable together, we wouldn't have said, you know what, let's stop these support groups. Let's start praying, right? Let's start praying together. And I'm not saying that's the answer to everything. That just was our experience. Let's start praying. Some things let's let go of. Let's give it up. Let's just take a break from things for a while. And again, that's where our experience started to change. And eventually, God saw fit to bless us as parents. But thank you so much for sharing your experiences, all of you. I'm going to bring all of you in for one final question. We got about 4 minutes, unfortunately. Hopefully it's okay if we go long. I don't think it'll be a crime if we go longer. And I will circle back to TJ to allow you to also speak about the book. Apologies that I didn't get around to that. But this final question is for everyone. What resources or advice would you offer to someone who's just starting out and realizing that their journey to parenthood may be challenging, that they may actually end up dealing with some aspects of infertility? What resources or advice would you offer to someone just starting out? And I guess we can go maybe Brandon. Let's start Brandon, go Veronica, Dr. Giddens, Candid.
The first step I would tell someone is to, after they receive their diagnosis, seek therapy or some sort of mental health help, because you don't realize how painful that journey is. And allow your therapist to help you navigate the medical side of it, because sometimes you get so goal oriented that you just jump into it, not realizing how much pain you already had and how much pain anything that isn't a success can impact you. And so go through therapy first alongside of your medical journey, and that way you have the tools and the strength to overcome anything that may not go in your favor during the treatments.
Love it. There's that key word again, therapy. I love it every time you mention it, man. It's vital. It's vital to have that along with the medical advice as well. Dr. Veronica, what resources or advice would you offer to someone who's just starting out and realizing that this infertility thing may come knocking?
So I think a couple important things. If the female partner is 35 years of age or older, then after 6 months of trying is really the time to seek help, just because time is of the essence. And for younger couples, at 1 year. So knowing that timing is important. I've had couples come, 4 or 5 years later, which really is too long. So as soon as you know is the time to seek help. Also communicate with your partner, keep everything open for discussion. I think also something that we may not want to address, but I think is still important, is like looking at like your insurance benefits and the resources and programs that are available in your state from your company, because there are some specific things that may be covered that pertain to like assisted reproductive techniques, and that may impact your decision for what to try first, or how many rounds of something you're going to do before you decide to take a different route. And I think having financial stress adds to all the overall stress of the situation. And so knowing that ahead of time can just help to make some decisions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Giddens, what resources, what advice would you offer to someone who's just starting that journey and realizing that there may be some difficulties in the form of infertility?
Yeah, I think, I think this group is fantastic. And I think, listening to what everybody has said so far is going to be a good start. I think being vulnerable, being honest, talking to your partner, having that emotional support around you with the people that you care about and you trust. I'm an internal optimist, and, and dealing with thousands of patients with fertility, from the medical standpoint, outside of insurance and all these other things, but you take that away, there's not many men that we can't help, right? So I think finding someone in wherever region whatever part of the country you are in, that really focuses on this and that cares about your welfare, really wants the best for you and your partner, I think is medically, I think is one of the best things you can do. So doing your own research, there's great resources out there, IVF websites, there's like start.org, in urology, there's like sexual medicine websites that highlight urologists that are focused on this. And I think that, like I said, it's just a few men that we can't help. So I think doing the research is really, really important.
Thank you. Thank you for being that optimist and for sharing that hope. Someone definitely needs to hear that. A lot of people need to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. Ken, would you mind jumping in on this question? What resources, what advice would you offer to someone who's just starting out and realizing that infertility may impact their journey to parenthood?
The advice I'd give is don't be afraid to go to the doctor, even if you don't want to. That's what I did. But at the same time, in addition to that, find you a team, a good team. I'm like Brian and so many others, there's a few others, and it's like this is a core team. And it's like, look, when we were going through things, at a certain point, we just leaned on one another, and it was like group setting. Let's have this discussion. If we were going to study, we're like, yo, let's pause it for a second. We just need to talk and just have that support team, because you can't do this by yourself as a man. There are so many tropes out there that say, well, you should be this way or this way, and the whole nine. It's like, no, it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to have a team you can be vulnerable with, so that you're not in this by yourself. Outside of your spouse, it's a necessity to have a team to be able to make it through this.
Thank you for that. TJ, what resources, what advice would you offer? And then after you answer that question, please tell us about the book that you have as well.
So the first thing is, if you don't know, if you're deciding if you're want to get married, I would say I wish someone would have told us when we were going through our premarital counseling, hey, by the way, maybe you should go get both of your fertility, do a fertility workup for both you and your husband. I think that most people just jump to the marriage and assume that, kids are a natural part of that without doing the medical background first. You get the blood test and all of that kind of stuff. But in terms of fertility, especially with the man, my husband wasn't even thinking about that. So I would say, before we even get to the point of it come knocking at your door, be proactive about seeking out a urologist, seeking out at least doing a semen analysis if you're a man, just to make sure that everything is going the way it should. For the women out there, one question that my best friend posed to me when I was going through my struggle is, do you want to be pregnant or do you want to be a mom? They're not mutually exclusive. And so I had to then kind of come to terms with, well, which one do I want? I could still be a mother without being pregnant. And so I would encourage them to explore other options. We adopted my daughter in 2019, and if she is my husband, like that's the doppelganger, only that she's a girl. They're like thick as thieves. You would never be able to tell that she's not our child. And so I would say you have to choose the path that's for you. Don't let people put themselves in your uterus and tell you what to do with it, and vice versa with the men. You have to make the decision that's best for you, because it's you and your partner together. But you should explore all options and explore your money, your finances. Nothing is free in this process. Yes, you would hope that somebody drops a baby at your door, but even that is not free. So I would encourage you to make sure you check your finances based on the options that you want to take, and then be okay with telling people no, and being okay with telling people to stay out of your business, and being okay with telling people not everybody needs to pray for you, not everybody needs to do that. Like, you have to be focused on what you need and your significant other needs. And lastly, I say choose your doctor like you choose your shoes. If you don't like a pair of shoes, you put them back, you don't buy them. And so I would not just stick with one doctor or one opinion. We went through we went through 2 urologists because we had one, we got a second opinion. It was kind of like we were a money train with that person, and we went back and we went with the person that was going to educate us and sit with us and not treat us like a number, but really take the time to explain to us what was going on. So if you don't feel like your doctor is meeting your needs, has good bedside manner, don't just stay with that doctor. And don't just stay with them because they're Black. Don't just stay with them because they're a friend. Or don't just stay with them. Stay with them because they make you feel okay and that they're helping you through your process, not just as a doctor, but as a person. I think that's so critical when you're going through this journey for sure.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about your book, if you don't mind.
So yes, my book, Semen Secrets, Truth and Confessions of a Wife Dealing with Male Infertility, is actually my journal. When I went through infertility, when we found out about it, when I looked around, there were not many people talking about male infertility, definitely not any Black people talking about male infertility. And there were no support groups really for my husband, for people that looked like him. But there was nothing for me, the wife, to tell me how to deal with me and also how to deal with my husband. So one of my friends encouraged me to make the space that I didn't see. And so that is how I came up with my book. And so it's available on Amazon. You can also follow me at TJ Payton. In addition, you can go to www.semensecrets.com. And the book came out of my husband not wanting to tell anybody that he had infertility. And so that's why it's called Semen Secrets. And another caveat I will say about the book is when I wrote the book, I wanted an ending to be that I had a baby, but you'll see at the end of the book, I'm kind of spoiling it. I did not have my baby at the time I wrote my story. And so I ended the book with, I'm still hoping to be a mom. And that's some people's story today. They're still praying and hoping and believing to be a parent or whatever it is, the space they're supposed to be in. So check out the book and let me know what you think about it.
Thank you, TJ. The last thing I'm going to ask from you all is I want you to share where you can be located on social media or other online, how people can reach you if they do want to just chat with you, get additional information, possibly set up a visit for some of these resources that you're talking about. I do want to give each of you an opportunity to share your information, where you can be located. And for myself personally, I'm actually an accountant. I don't really do much in this space, but I'm married to someone who is a strong proponent. Every day is fighting this battle. So I want to share her information as well as my own. Deanna is at Barren Fruit. My social media handle is at bmurray_CPA. And also one other thing I want to share for myself that I've learned in terms of someone who's starting out or realizing this might be part of the journey. I have learned I used to cringe and I used to dread when people, even though we have a child, I used to dread when people would say, when are you going to have more children? And I used to really kind of tighten up because I didn't want people to ask me. But at some point I had to come back in my faith and realize that's not that journey, that's not removed from who I am. Right. So I can't be ashamed to talk about that. And I started to use it as an opportunity to speak to what me and my wife, the wins that me and my wife did experience, right? We've experienced plenty of losses. But when people say that question, I say, hey, you know what? We were actually told we would never have a child. We were told we literally had less than a 1% chance of having a child. And somehow we ended up with this miracle named Ariana, and she blesses our life every day. And we're just thankful to God for the child that we have, right? And sometimes people don't know how to take that. They're like, oh, okay. But that was my way of being like I'm not ashamed of what we went through, right? Like it's actually a blessing that we went through it, and not everybody's journey looks the same, but I can only speak for what happened with us. We experienced some wins along the way too. So that being said, I want to give you all an opportunity to share where you can be located on social media, starting with you, Brandon, moving to Veronica, Dr. Gittens, Ken, and of course, TJ will let you do that as well.
You can find me on Instagram at brandon.therapist, YouTube at Brandon's Therapeutic Life, and can also visit my website, which is infertilityisintinferior.com.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Dr. Veronica, how can we locate you if we need more resources and information?
So the best way to reach me, honestly, is either an email or a phone call. So I'd say my email is veronica.a.rupert@gmail.com. It's just my name with my middle initial. I have social media. I don't really use it. So you could try to reach out to me, but the response time, it will be delayed. So email's the best. That's my email. If you put in the subject line, if there's something specific that you're seeking, then that, it'll, prompt me to address it as soon as I can.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your time and all of the valuable information that you shared. Dr. Gittens, how can we connect with you for more information, resources, advice?
Yeah, I should do more on social media myself. I have an Instagram page. It's at Dr. Gittens. I don't check it as much. I actually have somebody that does my social media. But I have a practice here in Ballackinwood, which is right outside Philadelphia. We have a practice in Allentown, and we also have a practice in New York. The website is centersforsexualmedicine.com. So it's centersforsexualmedicine.com. Be happy to see anyone. One of the good things is, Brandon, I'm glad that I'm so glad I got to meet you. And hopefully we can send some referrals your way. Because I think the therapy arm is really what's missing in the male fertility or just a fertility space. So I'm really glad that you're doing that. But like I said, Centers for Sexual Medicine, I'm available. We work with a lot of the IVF centers as well in New York and Allentown and in Philadelphia. So if you need help with that or some advice with that, then I'd be happy to put you in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gittens, for your time, all of your valuable information. Really appreciate you. Ken, how can they connect with you if they want to chat, if they want to get more connected and pick your brain on some things?
Oh, well, certainly. The direct way, email KennethA.Spence@gmail.com. But social media, I'm getting rid of the other page. So it's at tactical.pastor, and that's me. I could get into all that, but I ain't getting into that right now. But yeah, the main way is the email, but you can hit me up on social media right there. PASTOR. There you go.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you as always, man. You've been a blessing to me for sure. TJ, how can we locate you online, on social media, via email? How can we connect with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at TJ Payton, and that's PEYTEN. You can also follow me at Semen Secrets. You can go to my website, www.semensecrets.com. And you can also email me at tjpayton, that's PEYTEN, at gmail.com. And yeah, I'm open to anybody. I've gotten a lot of emails, instant messages. So I would love to hear from you and provide support.
Well, thank you all. I wish we could go longer. This has really been, man, this has been a blessing to me. I know it's going to bless a lot of people to get these resources, this information, and even just to have this outlet so that you don't have to go through these things on your own. Extremely valuable. Your time is extremely valuable. I know we went over, and I apologize for that, but I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you how much of a blessing this has been. So that being said, we're going to wrap up this Journey to Fatherhood event that we've had. And if you are streaming, if you're tuning in, please be mindful that you can reach out to any of the individuals that have spoken tonight, and they will be more than happy to circle back with you and to help, including myself. Would love to speak with anyone. And we have the founder, the Harriet Tubman of infertility, as I jokingly call her. It's a little inside joke, but yeah, we have my wife on here, Deanna Murray, founder of Barren Fruit and advocate for infertility. What would you like to say, dear?
I just wanted to say how good of a job you just did moderating this panel. It's an awesome panel. So I wanted to thank all of the panelists and speakers that spoke today. I think this was a powerful conversation. In our private chat behind here, we're saying we need a part 2 on this. Like, we don't do this enough and bring in the brothers. I think it's important because I'm hoping that this streams and people can hear this, because we talk about the women not speaking up. We know the men aren't speaking up, because it's even more taboo not to share your feelings and not to be vulnerable. So one, especially the men that were on here, like, I commend you for being vulnerable, for allowing us to see into your lives, and you being open enough to share, like, not only your experiences, but your feelings about it. And I hope and pray that it impacts other people to also speak out. Now they know at least there's a few people that they can speak to, but also get some resources, So I think having the therapy piece, having 2 urologists, having the book piece with TJ, like, I think there's a lot of resources here. So I hope and pray that we get some more contacts, that they reach out to you. But also wanted to commend you, since you're my husband, for moderating this panel. Like, I think you did an awesome job. Ari has to make her debut. She has to, right? So go ahead and say hi. You're here.
Mommy,
So
I just wanted to ask you, can I have it?
Ari, we are in the... I can't.
It's the way things go.
We did this pretty good. I should have kept my behind off of the air. But thank you guys. We're signing off. Please tune in, and please, if you tuned in, please share this with someone. Please share. Also, I just want to also make sure that people are aware of the rest of the week before we sign off, that we still have a whole week. Today is actually the official first day of Infertility Empowerment Week. This is still the first day of Infertility Empowerment Week. And we kicked it off yesterday with our Confidence in 3K walk. That is still my blessing, y'all. She's my less than 1% chance. She's 7. She's very much a 7-year-old, but I am still grateful, and she's such a blessing to us. She just went upstairs. Okay. So I'm just going to flash up here real quick. Brian, I'm going to let you go. Is there anything last that you want to say before I just let everybody know what we have coming up this week?
No, I think it's all been said.
Okay.
Thank you for your diligence.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So what we still have coming up this week is, I'm missing a day. So we still have Advocacy Day. And then after that, we have Active Testimony. So Advocacy Day, which is coming up tomorrow, is just a way for us to find ways that we can be advocates right from our seat. What are some things that we can do? What are letters that we can write? What do they look like? Who can we send them to? Who can we speak to? Who can we reach out to? That's happening tomorrow. So please register for that, and I'll give you more information. On Wednesday is Defining Your Life podcast. Marsharell Tober interviewed me. It's a quick 15 minutes speed interview of just being active while you're healing. And so she asked me some key questions, being as though founding barren fruit and still going through. And in real transparency moment, I'm going through right now, but still having to pull and find the strength to continue to push on and continue to encourage others. And sometimes those of us that are encouraging others, we need some healing too. We need the support too. So please keep a sister in prayer. All right. And next, after that, we have Queens United Advocate Meetup, which is happening on Thursday afternoon in Drexel Hill at the Queens United Holistic Center. Please register for that. That is an in-person event. And we're hoping that if you are in the healing space and the supportive space, if you are a business owner, what have you, please tune in and make sure that you join us. If you do not have a shirt from the conference, you can order a shirt and then make sure that we're all unified together. If you thought today's conversation was powerful, which it indeed was, we're continuing that thought, because on Friday, what airs is In Full Bloom, My Story Isn't a Secret. This is indeed, it's a powerful conversation, guys. It's a powerful conversation. Please make sure that you tune in. We will be doing like a Facebook watch party. We have some really powerful stories that we're telling here, and we're hitting on a number of different topics. And I think it's going to go far. And I hope and pray that, again, please share this with someone, because this is streaming. Anybody in the world can watch this. And we're hoping that we also join in the conversation. All right. So that's what the lineup is that we have going on. And with that, stay tuned. See you later. Bye-bye.